at risk of saying something super unpopular, I dropped out of watching Marvel movies like relatively early on. I saw, I don't know, a half a dozen of them, and I feel like there are a lot more than that. There's sequel after sequel. There are often battles of good versus evil, and I have to say, that sort of good versus evil thing is common in movies, especially comic book movies. It's also common, to be honest, in midrash, in the way the ancient rabbis would tell stories. But of course, situations tend to be more complex than that. We should be suspicious of any situation that tries to paint life in simple terms of black and white, good versus evil. There's a story that popped up a couple of weeks ago in the Torah of the daughters of Selsberg, who, the original story, there were 5 daughters of a man who died, and they protested to Moses that the laws of inheritance were unfair. Their father's name would be erased among the people because the inheritance went along the male line. He shouldn't be punished by having his name erased just because he had daughters and not sons. And Moshe goes to Moshe. Moshe protests it to God, and God says, "Hey, you know what? They're right. We should change." This week is a sequel. This is why it's like Marvel movies. It's a sequel, and it's painted as not a good versus evil thing. The rest of the tribe of Manasseh says, "You know what? If since property rights in the ancient world, much of the world today, go by the male line, if these women marry people from other tribes in the middle of our tribal allotment, our tribe of Manasseh, there's going to be other tribes. We don't feel safe. That this decision, you're trying to do the right thing, but it's endangering us." And God says, "You know what? You're right too. We should keep the old rule that they get to inherit their father's land, but there's going to be an extra rule that it has to stay in the tribe of Manasseh." This knowledge, this insight that in the sequel, where it gets to be a little complex, that good actions trying to help out sometimes have unintended negative consequences, is important. It's sometimes overlooked in today's polarized culture that things that we like and what we feel is a net good sometimes have a negative consequence as well, or can be experienced by others from a different angle as negative. We have to understand that this is sometimes the case. There are sometimes gray areas, and not pretend that what we experience as a net good is a net good for everyone. We have to be honest and acknowledge that there are often unintended negative consequences. Our resistance to doing this, or afraid that opening up anything negative will get us to be seen, or that quote will be pulled out and played as negative online, can't do it. Have to make sure that we remember life is not a comic book movie. It's not a simple midrash. Good versus evil movies are fun, but we have to know that moral certainty is sometimes just a special effect. Shabbat Shalom.